Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Wrestling Underground podcast. I am your host, as always, Chad Porto. Joining me is the glorious one himself, Marcus Green. Marcus, how are you?
All good. Coming
So,
off Impact 1000. Yeah.
yep. We're on the 101, 1001. I don't know. I mean, obviously, that's how they're going to address it. At least that's how they should address it. But we'll see how they officially number it later on down the line. But let's talk about it real fast. I didn't get to see it, but I do know the results. I've seen some highlights, so I have a general working knowledge about it. Let's run through it, talk about the big moments, which we'll get to at the end of the little segment. Apparently, we had a Knockouts World Tag Team Title match. The MK Ultra defeated the Death Dolls. Really would like to see. I think we talked about last week. Courtney Rush with what's her name? I can't remember her name now. Jody Threat. There it is.
Jody Threat.
I'd like to see those two as a tag team. Then we also had the Adrenaline Rush theme, which was great. Ultimate X was back with Samurai Dalso, the former Kalisto, with great lucha things, come great lucha responsibilities. And Alan Angels gets the win. We'll talk. I don't know why we're pushing Alan Angels. He's got about as much charisma as a empty vacuum sack. But, you know, hey, what are we going to do? I heard really good things about this match. I really want to go back and see this. Without even looking it up, Jake Something defeated Dirty Dango. I knew that. They had the Fox box back, if you were watching Impact back in the day. And I think they should bring it back. They had 10 minutes for your regular matches on TV. I think it was like 15 for your main events, and then 20 or 25 for title matches. And, like, if you hit the time limit, there'd be judges who would vote on who would win. And I really liked that format. It really made them interesting and unique, and that's what they should go back to. But I'm just a moron. What do I know? Let's see. We also had Rhino and Steve Macklin are building up to a feud, maybe at Bound for Glory. Eric Young defeated Kenny King. We had an appearance from Shark Boy doing his thing. AMW returned briefly to the ring for a multi-man match, which I will talk more about probably next week when I watch it, because that's probably what I'm most excited about. We have the winners of the Feast or Fire. I will say this before we get into like any real deep conversation about anything. I do like how they're building up the digital media title. Like, it went from being something that I had zero interest in. Joe Hendry made it into a relevant thing. Kenny King did a nice job elevating it a little bit more, and now Tommy Dreamer has it. And now we have it as an official briefcase, which I did not expect, because if you remember correctly, I had Chris Bay getting the world title, Crazy Steve getting the X Division, and Moose getting the tag titles, which with Yuya Uemura getting the Fire Championship briefcase. Instead, Crazy Steve got the digital media title, Moose got the world title, and Bay got the tag team titles. So we're going to be getting some ABC versus Rascals here in a bit. Sadly, Yuya got the Fire briefcase, and I like the way they did it, because instead of him getting it early, he's among the last. He's the last one. He doesn't even open his briefcase. I think it was Chris Bay opens it up and sees that it's the tag titles, and then Joe Hendry and Yuya just kind of stand there, but shook. The one thing I will say that I'm looking forward to is they're going to do kind of like a Yuya goodbye tour of sorts. And obviously this is all just to send them back to Japan, because they're getting ready to recall their excursion guys. I think the AEW has one as well. And I think he's about to leave as well, so we'll see more about that. We got Josh Alexander versus Trey. Right? Was it Trey? Yeah, it was Trey. Josh obviously gets the win. Zach does some screwing around. Saban comes out. Looking forward to that. We get the announcement that it's going to be Will Ospreay versus Speedball at Bound for Glory. We'll talk about more about that match when we talk about the Bound for Glory segment of the show. Then we get the announcement that Shelly and Alexander will headline Bound for Glory, which we saw coming. Then, of course, the main event, which saw Gail Kim, Awesome Kong, Mickie James, Trinity, and Jordan Grace taking on Sasha Evans, Angelina Love, Giselle Shaw, Deanna Purrazzo, and I can't remember her name, Tasha Steelz. And the faces win. Gail suffers a concussion, but all in all, I heard it was a pretty solid match. But let me start with a question about the main event, Marcus. It was called the biggest knockouts match in the history of the company. Did it live up to the billing?
Biggest knockouts match in the history. I have to go back and review it. Depending on, I guess, how you define biggest. Um, Definitely a lot of fan in terms of just nostalgia and importance. It may very well be, like I said, that snapshot of what they did in the 1,000th episode, the opening segment. By the way, perfectly set up to have them open the 1,000 and then close the 1,000th and first. But yeah, perfect snapshot of past, present, and future. It may very well be just in terms of, because I don't know if have they ever done something like that before, where they had to kind of like the past, present, and future knockouts, unless they did some on a knockdown, which I don't know if counts.
I don't think so. It's very possible that they did, but I think if they
Yeah,
did, it was like you said on a knockout to knockdown. Now I know one of them was like a big deal, but I
yeah,
don't think even if it was on one of those like in 2019 or so, not to the degree.
yeah, yeah. So I wouldn't,
Uh,
I wouldn't necessarily debate it. It was good. It was real solid, and shout out to our girl Gail, man. She came out to let everybody know, like, I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. I ain't lost. I haven't lost anything. You know what I'm saying? You still got it, never lost it type of deal. She looked good, and she went out there and she showed. I'm like, Gail might be able to still get back in this thing, man. Like, I know they trying to do a little something with Mickey. Throw Gail back.
I would very much like to see Gail return. And now, when I say full time, I mean full time for Impact. You have maybe 16 dates a year. They film 3 or 4 shows every taping, sometimes 2, sometimes more, and maybe put her in a tag match. I think Gail with a Jody Threat or a Savannah Evans, one second, or maybe another knockout that we haven't seen yet. I think bringing them in with her and letting them do a tag feud with whoever, I think that's a great way to bring Gail back into, even if it's Awesome Kong, right? I think bringing her in as a tag team would give you a real unique opportunity that I don't think you should be so quick to dismiss. Now, it all depends on her, right? She's the one that walked away. She wasn't, put out to pasture. She's like, I've done this with Jordan, or maybe it wasn't Jordan, it was Deanna, it was with Tessa and Mia. Like, I've done it with as many people as I can to help put them over, and I'm good. I'm confident with my actions, and I'm good. Plus, she suffered a concussion when Velvet yanked her off the ring apron. So, like, I don't know if she's sitting there going, this is why I didn't want to come back, or this is why I retired in the first place, to avoid this. Maybe that's not a big deal to her. Maybe she's like, listen, I haven't had a lot of concussions. I haven't been hurt a lot. Like, I'm fine. Who knows? I don't. Marcus, would you like to see her back as a tag team?
No, I think that would be great. With Kong, I don't know. I think you made a good thing about the Jody threat, because I think Kong is, and I was talking about this with James Truepenny, who I do the Truepenny show with. Like, Kong took a very hard path through her career, because she started out in Japan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she worked her way through that, but her body is taking a lot of beating, and I think when you go back and watch, you kind of see that they did the right thing the way they booked the match, because she was the final hot tag and that whole deal. But you can kind of see where it's like, this wouldn't be something that I like to see her do consistently if they tried to get like a final run out of it, because I don't necessarily know if she hold up right, and I wouldn't want to see her looking bad in any way, shape, or form. So I think getting Gail in there, who I think has the genes for it, if you know what I'm saying, in terms of her genetic makeup and whatnot, because she still looks good. She's in shape. Like, she went out there and killed it. And tagging her with like a younger person that she can coach and mentor, I think would be great. Because not like she's already doing that anyway behind the scenes. So I think that'll be probably a better combination than somebody who Gail might have to put herself in a position to overwork to hide certain flaws for.
So, one of the things I want to point out is that when you carry that much weight like Kong does, you age faster as an athlete. You get slower, you don't take bumps as well, everything hurts more. It's why Big Show stopped bumping when he did. It's why Abyss, like his last match with Grado, his knees were so bad he couldn't actually do anything. And I'm not being like superfluous when I say that. I'm not being hyperbolic. He literally stood in the middle of the ring and Grado ran at him. That for like 6 minutes. That was his entire last match. It was terrible. Same thing with Vader. Like once Vader hit like 40 or 38, you could tell his body just wasn't responding. Same with Bam Bam Bigelow. Now they all got progressively worse at different rates. But Kong is at that point where you can tell by the way she walks that she's not comfortable. That there's some lingering issues with her knees, maybe with her back, maybe with her hips. Now, if she were to say get down to her glow weight, I don't know what that was, but she was looking pretty svelte back then. And maybe gets now granted, like this is like a huge ask for somebody, and I know that, but like get your knee scoped, see if you can relieve some tension, get some of the weight off your knees. I think you'd be able to prolong her run, so to speak. But I don't necessarily think that you need to go that route. I would like to see her come back one more time for one very specific reason. And it's either to put over someone like Savannah Evans or someone we don't have on the roster yet. Just like some giant build up to a giant new monster heel who takes the throne by taking down Kong. I think if you really believe in Savannah Evans, which I don't think they do, not as well as I do, or not as much as I believe in Savannah. I think if you get to that point where you're like, Savannah needs to be the new top heel, I think you bring Kong back and have Savannah beat Kong and do it decisively. Maybe you bring Kong back and she fights Tasha Steelz or Giselle Shaw and wins in 2 minutes, right? Just throws them around, hits them with the I forgot what her power bomb was called. I wanted to call it the Kong bomb. I'm pretty sure that's
the
not
awesome
it.
bomb.
There it is, the awesome bomb. She hits the awesome bomb, gets a quick win, and then Savannah comes around, beats her in the same amount of time. So I think that could be a way to go with Kong if you want to do one more thing with her. But outside of that, I do agree. I don't want to see Kong around that often. And if you do, I think you go the Andre route. And that's who she reminds me the most of right now. Like the way his gait kind of fell apart within like a year and a half. I feel like if you wanted to use Kong some more, you find her a tag team partner, a Tasha Steelz and Giselle Shaw, someone who can bump constantly for her. And you go in that direction. But unless that's the case, you go like, no, she shouldn't be a Knockouts champion anymore. You shouldn't be doing any type of long-term build for her. Just tag team matches only.
Yeah, that'll be good. Like I said, to save it for the hot tag, because and I'm very much looking forward to your breakdown, Shannon Sharp style when you finally watch it. But because it did seem like, and to her credit, it kind of seems like, and maybe you saw this from the 1000 show, like she's using her clear, obvious physical degradation to play into the calm demeanor of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Like the being bent over and the slow walking, she's playing that into the monster of it all. But then you get into the ring, and then she kind of, you notice like she's very much standing up, not allowing herself to be knocked down, doing a lot of spinning back fists and chops and just hits, and then something happen, and then she'll do a lot of moving all at once, and then after that it's like, okay, it's time we gotta go home. Awesome bomb and implant bust and get up out of here.
That makes sense. And I agree with you on the way she may be presenting herself physically. I look at like the way PCO, and that's another great 1-to-1. I remember watching Cara Ule, Pierre Cara Ule, back in the day, right? Dude was feisty. He was a little speedy guy. And then, you look at him now and it's like, if this dude tries to jog upstairs, I'm afraid his spine is going to fall out of his ass. So, like, the body degrades, especially when you're a heavier person. That's just how it works. So, hopefully, Awesome Kong, if she does stick around for a little bit, is well protected. Let's talk, though, about some guys who may not be sticking around. First and foremost, we find out that Heath Slater's contract is up in October. So that's one of the names that may be gone here. It seems like they're going to do something with Tommy Dreamer and Crazy Steve for the digital media title. I don't know how Heath plays into that. I don't know if he does. I don't know if he doesn't. Maybe they do a triple threat, which I think would be the best scenario, because he should still be at Bound for Glory, and if he's not, it's not like, if his contract doesn't run to Bound for Glory, it's not like you can't get a handshake deal for one or two more shows. Like, that's not within the realm of possibility. But I don't really see him leaving as a miss. I don't think he's a bad hand, and I think if you're a company who's looking to add a little bit of charisma to your build out of your roster, I think he can come in and be that kind of guy. But I don't think he's so good that he warrants a spot over some younger guys. And what I would like to see Impact do is look for more young guys who have high potential to not only stick around but to raise the profile of the brand. I think the partnership with New Japan, because you got to remember who Impact is catering to at the moment, is very niche, very wrestling-centric fans who all know who New Japan is. I think bringing in guys like Kenta and Will Ospreay, I think those are the kind of guys that make more sense to have around as quote-unquote names, as opposed to the Heaths and Brian Myerses of the world. So I wouldn't mind seeing them 22 skidoo at all. Marcus, Heath, any concern about him possibly leaving, or are you looking forward to the day?
Not as sad about it. I think he's just found a groove and impact. I've liked, liked a lot of his matches, liked a lot of the stuff that they've had him do. He's somebody that's like I said, seemed like he's honed himself a little bit better with some of the reins off and whatnot, kind of taking that he's got kids thing and evolved it, even impact, even going to Impact, and even got to evolve his tag team with Rhino in that regard, which is interesting with this whole thing going on now. We're talking about Rhino potentially having this feud with Macklin, which I'm very much looking forward to, because we talking about guys who have gotten older and bodies aren't necessarily holding up after years. We extensively talked about that in certain instances with Rhino as well. But when he gets properly motivated and put him in the right scenario with the right person, he can show flashes that Rhino of old. And I think somebody like Macklin is exactly the guy that probably be the perfect guy for that scenario to bring that out of him. We'll see, because obviously, him attacking the guy backstage and going for a full-on match is two different things. So, but in terms of, back to the original about Heath, I think if they find something in or around, particularly around the digital media, or I don't know, maybe, I don't know if you want to throw him in the X Division or not, but put him, for more tag team contention. I think he could work. I think he works a lot better than maybe some other guys that's on the roster. But again, to your point as well, if he did go, I wouldn't exactly be, super depressed or nothing, because like you said, getting some younger, fresh faces in there that's hungry. Not saying he's not hungry, but there's a different vibe when you haven't really had or achieved anything. You get some guys in there like that, to shake things up. It'll be cool. But he's had a great run in Impact, all things being considered.
I mean, if we're being honest, the person that needs to go more than anyone in the men's side of things is Brian Myers. He brings so very little to the conversation. And I'm not a fan of the good hands. I'm sure they're real solid in the ring. Real solid. I am Impact needs characters. They need to hope that Danhausen gets fired, right? They need to hope that they can get their hands on someone of value that can come in with some prestige and some legitimacy as a top end character. Guys like Heath are fine. Guys like Brian Myers are fine, but they're not gonna make you want to stick around. And that's what you need. You need guys who are gonna make you want to stick around. Speaking of that, we find out that PCO is also a ticking clock, so to speak. He has given Impact notice that he'll be leaving Impact at the end of October. maybe I shouldn't say the end of October. At some point in October, his contract officially ends on October 30th, which is a little ironic considering he's the perfect creation one, the monster among men, and he's leaving the day before Halloween. Now, what I wouldn't mind seeing, Bound for Glory, because like I don't know when Bound for Glory is. I'm sure it's soon.
I think it's the 24th October.
Okay. Because that's what I was wondering is the exact dates. It's the 21st of October, according to
Gotcha.
Wikipedia.
Gotcha.
But like, yeah, so they have plenty of time to do this. Have PCO, Steve Macklin, and Rhino, maybe even Tommy Dreamer, do a hardcore Monsters Ball match for the digital media title. I think that would be a dope thing to do, because then you could also write off PCO. If you want to take the belt off of Dreamer, Macklin makes a lot of sense. You can build up Macklin as that mid-tier, because I think that's for Macklin, because I'm not a big Macklin guy, so like maybe I'm not seeing it. I also don't get the Young Bucks, so like there's always the possibility. But maybe there's that possibility that if you want to go with Macklin, you have him win the digital media title in a Monsters Ball at Bound for Glory. You build up his reputation as the new hardcore villain of the company, and I think you'll have something there. But yeah, it's just one of them.
Yeah, which is interesting because I think you're talking about Dream in that conversation. He's always gonna be the hardcore guy, but then you talk about the elevation of the viciousness with somebody like Crazy Steve, which I'm looking forward to seeing how that mixes up, because I could very well see him knocking off Dreamer, and then being a guy with that sadistic nature and in hardcore scenarios, him kind of taking that spot, and then if you run him into Macklin, which we don't necessarily see a lot of heel type things, but I think they would create some high quality mayhem together. Because I think I'm high on Macklin than you are, because I think I've come over to Macklin because I've stuck along with the journey and appreciated the stuff that he's done. He's also one of those guys, like, he's a heel, but he's not like one of those pissy heels that's go, if a fight's in front of him, he's gonna run towards it, not away from it, which I appreciate. Which also plays into his background of being his army background. So that's all that stuff works. Like I said, I'm looking forward to that stuff with Rhino, because that could get real intense. And yeah, it'll just be interesting seeing who they go with that. Because whether they want to go with Steve or Macklin, because like you said, they do a fatal four-way Dreamer, put in Heath in there, which might be a conflict of interest. He don't want to take it off his buddy, but he also wants to be the guy. And then you got you throw maybe Macklin and Steve in there. You might be able to throw Rhino in there, and it's a dual conflict of interest, because he don't want to take out his buddy, but he don't want to knock off his friend. And then you got Macklin potentially just trying to ruin Steve's night. Rhino's night, or vice versa. So it's a lot of drama that could be put in that type of scenario. So a lot of different ways they could go with that.
I think one of the things you could even do is like reinvent the Monsters Ball for a night, because I like the idea of doing like not Brian Myers, fuck Brian Myers, like Heath, Rhino, Tommy Dreamer, Crazy Steve, PCO, Steve Macklin, and you do a 6-man Monsters Ball battle royal, or kind of that, where like each guy has to be let out of their respective rooms at a different point in the match, kind of like an elimination chamber, but more of a street fight feel. I think that could be very interesting, especially if you sell the idea of the emotional and traumatic experience that sitting in a room for an entire day with no food, water, or light will do to you. And like especially if you bring out the vibe of it like permeating and like sitting on your soul after the match is over, like a residual. I think that could be really good, because like that's my one complaint about a Monsters Ball. They never carry over the emotional effects of the presumed, not presumed, but of the insinuated sitting in a room for a full day. Like, what does that do to you? To not be able to do anything, to not see anything, to ideally just have a bucket to put your waste in.
I want to see that because that plays so well into what they're doing with Steve because essentially the inside of his brain is Monster's ball.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's sitting inside his own brain in the locker room of all the trauma and stuff that he's gone through. And now he's feels like he's just being let out of it. So I think to your point, they could actually play into that for once on a long term scale with Steve because it's like Monster like leaving me in a dark room. Leave me in a dark room with no food or water, quality air for hours. Like I'm not disoriented. I'm home. You dig what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
I think that'll work really great. I think that also works for somebody like Macklin, who depending on you could elevate a little armor element in there. Like I was in a such and such camp, or I was trapped in behind enemy lines. Like I'm used to the you know. Then again, you can flip that too because in that scenario he'd be used to noise. It's the silence that f's him up. So yeah, you could definitely play into that.
A lot of possibilities there.
Yeah.
Sadly, the last major contract, because we know Deanna Parazzo is also set to expire, but we don't know if she's staying or not. And granted, we don't know if any of these people are staying. We know PCO's leaving, but Heath, Deanna, and now Sami Callihan, big name that popped up over the weekend. We don't know if they're staying. We know that Callahan's contract ends at the end of September, um, and that he'll be a free agent on September 30th. So what that means for his run in Impact and for himself is up in the air. I think what we're seeing here is kind of akin to, for a football analogy, Baker Mayfield. Baker was on the top of the world, top 10 quarterback according to QBR, or maybe it was quarterback rating. They're not the same thing. I don't know why they're named the same thing, but I digress. But he was a top 10 quarterback in 2020. Comes out in 2021, messes up his shoulder, doesn't look right, ends up leaving the team in 2022, bounces around. Now he's kind of finding his legs in Tampa. He didn't have a great night tonight. He didn't have a bad night. And I feel like Callahan might be in the same situation because he messed up his knee pretty bad, gained a lot of weight, and he's not moving at the same rate that he was. And while you don't want to sit here and be like, yeah, you changed your look because you're going bald, so that's not, you don't want to give the guy shit because that's not something he can help. But it hasn't helped his look. He looks very generic now, and maybe that's part of the issue. I'm all for the guy getting a hair plug if he wants, but like if he doesn't, that's also cool. But he doesn't have a great look anymore. He's not moving well anymore. He's only 36, so there's oodles and oodles and oodles of time and potential to get him back to the main event scene. But he's got to hit the gym. He's got to lose some of this weight. He's got to work on his mobility and his flexibility because it's really showcasing just how different he is as a worker today as opposed to 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm of the mindset that maybe Impact is saying, listen, Sammy, we want you back, but not at the price you're asking. Because you're not worth it anymore for the price you're asking. And with them cutting costs for the end of the year as they reshape and redo their editing and their production stuff, some hard choices will have to be made until the start of the new year when they get into a new financial quarter. So I don't know if Callahan sticks around, and I don't know if Callahan is good enough anymore to warrant a spot in AEW. And I certainly don't see him going back to WWE. So I feel like unless he goes and focuses more on what was it, Wrestling Revolver, his promotion out of Iowa, or maybe it's Cincinnati, or maybe it's both. Maybe he focuses. Maybe goes to MLW. He had a short little stint there after his immediate release, but he really needs to find that death machine energy that he had when he left the WWE because he doesn't have it anymore. And I want him to stick around in Impact. I think he's a hell of a talent. I really do. But this is not just comic books. This isn't just acting. This is an athletic endeavor. And if you cannot handle yourself, or if you're a shell of what you used to be, that's going to reflect in your value for the company. And it's something that I've mentioned before about Eddie Edwards. I don't feel like he's the Eddie of old. I don't feel like he's the ace of the company. I don't feel like he's taking it seriously. And I feel like maybe Eddie may need to go elsewhere for a while because, just like with Callahan, his matches have fallen off. Now, Eddie falling off is like Jordan falling off. right? You go from being one of the top 20 best workers in the world to being one of the top 60 best workers in the world. Yeah, you've fallen off, but you're still better than most guys. But it's clearly Josh Alexander's company now. And I think the goal should be to find him his Callahan. If Alexander's taken the position of Eddie, he's got to find his Callahan. And we don't have his Callahan yet. I think guys like Moose, Speedball, Macklin, as much as that pains me to say, guys like Chris Bay and Ace Austin, I think those are the guys you need to start shifting into the main event full time and letting guys like Eddie and Sami take their leave for now. I don't want to see Eddie leave the company. Like that's not what I'm saying. But when you stop taking care of yourself in an athletic based industry, it reflects in your performances. It reflects in your legacy. And for the last 2 or 3 years, Eddie has not looked great. He's looked good, but we expect greatness out of Eddie, not goodness. So I'm not broken up about Sami possibly leaving. I am interested to see who they bring in, essentially, not bring in, but who they move into his slot, though. It seems like it might be Crazy Steve, which I am not mad about. What's your thoughts on this?
Oh man, you was typing the thoughts out of my head. I feel the exact same way, man. And when I saw it, it was mildly surprising, but not disappointing because he's done so much in the company.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's the guy that essentially unfortunately handed it over to Tessa, who dropped the ball. But yeah, when he was hot, and like you said, he was that premier death machine, man. He was the person really that the company leaned on. He was their, all-purpose guy. Came off like a 5-2 play. He was doing everything, getting into it with everybody. All that stuff he did with Cage and whatnot. Like, he was the terror of Impact, but he's also the hero in a lot of ways. So, I mean, he had a hell of a run. He's done everything, got into it with everybody. And yeah, like you said, he's had, the injuries, put him in a different space. Not at all too different what we've seen with Rosemary and maybe a couple others. And he's not the same death machine, but he does still work good in a capacity he does. But at the same time, it might be one of those instances where he's been there for how many years now, that consistently.
Mm-hmm.
It might be time for him to go off and move on and do some different stuff. And then, because the great thing about what we're seeing with Impact now, specifically talking about these 1,000 episodes, the door's open for people to always come back. And I think I kind of gave up on the whole concept, the fantasy idea that, a lot of guys are lifers with these companies because they're so tied to them, like the day that AJ actually left. So I kind of got out of that disillusionment. AJ, will probably go into spending more time in WWE than he did in TNA. Jericho was never supposed to work for anybody else, and the list goes on and on. Nothing is finite. Anything can happen, and card is really subject to change with a lot of this stuff. So if they lose Callihan, I think that puts them in a real cool creative corner, as well as somebody like PCO, who has also done. Both of these guys understood the assignment and they did it completely. PCO has had kaiju matches, been set on fire, all manner of stuff, and Callihan has pretty much done most of that stuff to other people. So, I'm not mad at it. Sometimes you kind of got to go other places and kind of start spinning your wheels in certain instances. So, but to your point, it is going to be interesting seeing who they slip in those spots, because those are the guys who are going to be dictating in the main event space for the next couple of years.
I think the only guys that you can sit here and say for sure, like, we can't lose them, is Josh Alexander, Speedball. I would say ABC. I think Bay really has potential. I think they both have potential. Him and Ace Austin have really great potential as single stars. And then maybe Jordan Grace. And maybe Trinity. I think those are the 6 names that if they left, you couldn't replace. Because let's be honest about Deanna. She's only what she is because Impact made her what she is. She, as great of a talent as she may be in the ring among other women, the mystique and aura was only given to her because Impact allowed her to have it. If you made Deanna, you can make anyone. Jordan's a different beast entirely because you will not find another woman, at least easily, who has anything her physique going on. Like her look is so unique, and that's hard to find. I'm also hoping that this allows Impact to maybe look elsewhere. I don't have confirmation about this, but there are rumblings that maybe Jacob Fatu and Alexander Hammerstone may be done in MLW. Maybe they want to reach out to Richard Holiday, who just had a WWE tryout. Maybe they're looking at somebody like Mandy, who is now officially a free agent, the former Mandy Rose. Maybe, dare I even dream it, Phil Brooks, Mr. PCM, MCM, CM, Punk. Who knows? There might be a huge influx of talent come January 1st. I don't know. That's why we watch.
Yeah,
Find out.
real quick though, about a particular individual who I don't think you mentioned, and I saw you tweet about this, and I share the same sentiments after a segment on this latest episode of Impact. What do you think they are gonna do, or what would you do with somebody like Jonathan Gresham? Because they got him in this damn infinity loop with Bailey that they don't seem to want to let go of.
I would push him to truthfully. I like what they're doing with Shelley, and if they turn Shelley heel, I think you keep the belt on Shelley. But I think you start building up to Gresham taking the belt off of Shelley. I would put Gresham, and so the thing is, I would have to sit down and have a very real conversation with John. And I would need to ask him, John, can you kill fuckers with your feet like Bryan Danielson did in 2006? I want violence. I want blood. I want viscera, not the wrestler. I want you to make people believe that you've broken limbs off of human beings. I don't mean break the bones. I want people to actually believe that you've removed full limbs from bodies. I would turn him into a violent, psychopathic submission wrestler. Maybe bring in somebody with the ideal get would be Kurt Angle, right? Have Kurt come back as a manager. If you can't get him, get somebody else like a Nunzio. Now I know that doesn't sound like a big get, but he's a shooter. Get guys that can come in and be like, this is what you need to become. This is where John needs to go. Now, if you don't go that route in the main event, which is what I'm pushing for, I think you go an alternate route. You find your own pure division, because the pure division isn't the X division, and too many times people correlate the two as one and the same. That's not true. The pure division is purely wrestling. It's not acrobatics. It's not spots. It's in-ring competition. And I think if you bring in John Gresham and you create something called the pit fighter division, where you take the ropes down and it's just John Gresham booting you in the face for 6 minutes until it makes you tap, I think that's money. I think you got a lot of guys in the company who can fit that style, and it doesn't even need to be a grappler. You could have brawlers like Tommy Dreamer and Rhino. You could have guys like Eddie Edwards, more hybrids. But as long as you build it around John Gresham beating the shit out of people, I think you got money. Because I would push John Gresham to the damn moon. I forgot to include him in my 6. I think he's number 7. I don't think you can lose John Gresham. I think if you are serious about building a brand of badass, technical, acrobatic, just monsters, I think you need Gresham. Personally.
Absolutely not. I was, like I said, they look like they're getting up for another match between him and Bailey. Like I said, they feel like they got these guys in a loop. You had that match, and we go with your idea. Also, I don't know if we go with the division, but certainly make him the killer in the division. He's champion. How long do you keep him and Bailey apart in that interim?
Depends what I'm trying to do. If I'm just trying to not have them wrestle, that'd be easy, right? But if I'm trying to build up the division, and I'm trying to build up their feud as the next Daniel Styles, I would have them last wrestle heading into Bound for Glory this year. And then I would have Speedball maybe win the tag titles on a fluke with somebody else that he doesn't really like. I would have him win the digital media title for a little while. But he'd be winning. And he'd be winning constantly. And the only time he'd lose is when his tag team partner gets pinned, or when he gets if he loses like the digital media title or X Division title in like a triple threat where he doesn't get pinned, and I would have him be knocking people out, dropping people, and I would have Gresham, kicking people's legs out and making them tap, and like I would start building up around Slammiversary their inevitable rematch for the quote unquote, if you want to call it the pit title or whatever we want to call it, and not have them interact until like the last 3 or 4 weeks before Bound for Glory. Have them be apart for a full year, and have them build into this match with the idea that they would have the best match. I'd give them 30 minutes. I'd be like, listen, here's Papa's checkbook. Go crazy. I don't want you to hold back spots. I don't want you to hold back ideas. If you think of something so stupid it could kill you, sign the waiver and go do it. But make this the most impressive match anyone's ever seen, to the point where we could have Bruno Sammartino and Ric Flair in their prime in the main event of the show, and it wouldn't be that match would still overshadow that, right? Like, that's what I would do. I'd give them a full year to build a storyline where they're not fighting each other, but they're both doing things that are drawing the attention of the other, having them be put over on commentary, building up the idea that when these two finally do collide, it's going to be just violence. And then I'd have the winner go on and take the world title off of whoever. Be it Alexander, Shelley, Sabin, Gresham, Crazy Steve, who knows, crazier things have happened. Eric Young, for instance. And then go in that direction. But that's a tentative idea. Maybe somebody has a better one. I'm open to that possibility. Marcus, sadly we lost a lot of... I shouldn't say we lost. Sadly, a lot of people lost their jobs over the weekend. WWE cut a lot of people. The most prominent names were probably Emma and Dolph Ziggler. Rick Boogs also got cut. And then like a bunch of people I don't really care about. What's her name? Not Liv Morgan. The other one, the bulky bitch. Dana Brooke.
Dana Brooke's a bulky bitch. Jesus. Oh.
So, like, there weren't a lot of big releases. And, like, the NXT talents that got released were a lot of, with all due respect or none, if you want to be offended, were nobodies. And there wasn't anything like, oh my god, I'm shocked. Shocked. Matt Riddle got cut, but, he's a lunatic. So, like, fuck him. I think the biggest NXT female to be cut was Aaliyah. And apparently, like, the internet doesn't like Aaliyah, and I don't know why. So, like, that was weird.
Yeah, that is weird. She hasn't done anything. She's probably one of the most least offensive people.
She might just not be good, which fair, right? So now we're sitting here, Impact's about to lose 4 or 5 people. There's some roster spots, so to speak. I know the big easy get is Dolph. Like, I want to see Dolph in Impact. And listen, maybe that's the answer, because maybe if Dolph, even though he's like 43 now, maybe you give Dolph 2 or 3 years in the company, maybe he does something. Maybe he raises his legacy to a new height. Maybe you bring back the Spirit Squad, which, you know what, I wouldn't even be against. And by all the rights, people talk very highly about Nick Nemeth as a person, as somebody who did right by a lot of guys, especially during the pandemic. He bought out a lot of people's like t-shirt shops on Pro Wrestling Tees. Like, that's dope, cool shit. Emma's a name that I think a lot of people would like to see back in Impact. Not necessarily, in my opinion. I don't see the value in her.
Same.
Maybe if you pair her with Mandy, you can do like a social media influencer type of get. Mandy doesn't technically count because she was released like almost a year ago or like 8 months ago, something like that. And now she's an official free agent, so maybe you do like a Mandy Emma tag team. That'd be interesting. I'd be open for that if that's how you bring in Emma, but not as a single star. Not bringing in Emma as the face of the Knockouts division. That's a non-starter for me, there, folks. So, Marcus, of all the names that are out there, who do you want to see come in that was recently released by Impact?
I'd bring in Cedric put him in an X, and I bring in Dolph, making the big deal guy. That's looking to slap a fresh coat of paint on himself, so to speak, and go after that, put himself in the main event to go after the title. He's been somebody for the longest time that's needed just anything fresh, something he can really sink his teeth in that he can bite. And I feel like going back to your point of what they did with Deanna, because to me, there was no other stage she was going to be able to shine the way that she did consistently. Uh, than Impact. She wouldn't have got that. She would have never got that in WWE. Um, I don't know what else it feels like, and I feel like, I feel like we see that all the time with a lot of folks. I feel like that's why Trinity is so happy right now. Part of the reason, because she just wouldn't have got that spotlight in WWE. She really feels like a big deal, and she, it's opened her up creatively and just a lot of different avenues. I feel like somebody like Dolph could just use the change of scenery, to change the competition, and like a situation where he could really be consistently a big deal and focused on, and not just thrown out there to the wayside. So, and Cedric, amazing in the
When you
ring.
say Cedric, do you mean Mustafa Ali? Because I didn't think Cedric Alexander got released.
I feel like Cedric got released. I think him and Sheldon, right?
Sheldon got released. Sheldon Benjamin got released. That wouldn't be that would be a name. So we're talking about Gresham, right? Shelton Benjamin would be the perfect guy to bring in to unlock that nasty streak from him. I'm pretty sure Cedric's still with the company though.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think he's still in there. It felt like, I don't know. It felt. Oh, I guess the Twitter associated the both of them at the same. I think they associated him with Cedric. Uh, I mean Sheldon and Mustafa, because he was closer tied. But yeah, I mean, okay, he's still there. But yeah, Sheldon, somebody like Sheldon, and maybe you could roll in with Mustafa. I know he, a random bottle of detergent does more for you than he does. But um, yeah, somebody like Sheldon could definitely come in there and throw around his seniority and I don't know about the X division, but yeah, I mean, you really could really feel like you could throw him in any spot, because even at his age, he is still in hella shape and he can go. And yeah, so specifically him and Dolph, um, yeah, I think you got some real good stuff right there. Even as we talking about older guys, like you're not gonna find too many guys at their skill level at their age who doesn't exactly have a long history of injuries either. So yeah.
I think when it comes to Dolph, you bring him in with the idea that he's not going to be the top guy. You bring him in to help put over Alexander. I think that's the only way forward with Dolph. I don't think you can bring him in to be the world champion, but maybe. And now this is kind of touching, a little bit of the past here. Maybe you go back to what they wanted to do with Kurt Hennig. Now, I don't know if this is true, but the conversation when Kurt joined NWA TNA in 2002, 2003 was that he would eventually win the world's title. And he was 3-4 steps slower than what he used to be. He wasn't in great shape, but he was still Kurt Hennig, right? And, he eventually passed away while with the company. Maybe you can do that with Dolph Ziggler, kind of go back and bring him in and have, finish the story, so to speak, but with a different wrestler and with a different point of view. I think you can do something with that, but I wouldn't say that should be the priority, personally. So, we'll see what happens with any of them. I think of all the names, what I would like to see is Rick Boogs, but only if you bring in someone like Hammerstone and Elias, because I think those three dudes as like a trio of rock stars, because they all play instruments, like they're all musicians. I think if you bring all three in, you would have yourselves a very real, very interesting group that I think people would enjoy a lot of. So hopefully that becomes a thing that we could eventually see. But you would need Hammerstone to make that a thing.
Absolutely. Like I said, look what they did with Macklin. He was the most forgotten of the sons,
Mm-hmm.
potentially, and look at him now. So they definitely had a potential give them people the stage to finally realize their potential. Um, do you see any potentiality in Dana Brooke?
Yes.
And, okay.
Specifically, if you bring her in with or against Jordan Grace, because they're both bodybuilders. And I think if
Yeah.
you give Dana someone like Jordan who understands how to move with a body like that, because I think that's one of the biggest issues with Dana is Dana was taught how to wrestle the WWE style, and the WWE style sucks. Like it is dumb. It does not teach you how to be a good pro wrestler. I think if you give her a few months in Impact with the likes of Gail, Jordan, and some of the other names in the back, I think you could really unlock Dana Brooke's potential. That doesn't mean you're going to. Like none of this is a certainty. I write sports for a living, and like the one thing I never do is I never state certainly what's going to happen. If I'm currently covering the Utah Jazz, if I say, hey, John Collins is with the Jazz, he has the potential to make them a playoff contender. He has the potential to be the next Lauri Markkanen, become an all-star. I'm not sitting here saying he's going to be an MVP candidate because I don't know. You can't know this stuff. You can only evaluate what you see and make an informed assumption about what could happen. But the idea is that you can never know. So I don't know if any of these names will work. I don't know if Rick Books will work. I don't know if Shelton will work. But there's possibilities, and maybe Impact brings them all in. Even the NXT talents. I think, finding a diamond in the rough is something Impact does well. Granted, I get Speedball and Alexander, I think, are the two best workers, and Babe probably number 3. None of them were diamonds in the rough. Like, everyone knew how good they were. And somehow Impact's like, you want to play with us? And they're like, sure. And they're like, wait, what?
And I think to that end, I think this is another pro when it comes to what I talked about when we first talked about it coming in. This is another reason why getting Trinity was such a gem of a get. Because she is basically like the female Rey Mysterio in the industry. Like everybody loves Trent, no bad words about her, and she, if they see her thriving the way that she is, she could very much, give a heads up to like, look, man, like you can come over here and thrive and have damn near, obviously like full creative collaboration, because for as big as WWE is, it's it kind of reached like a choke point to where the people just can't really breathe. Even if it looks like they're doing a lot, they're not really having a chance to really, branch out in terms of their own creativity. So, like I said, Trent could very well help be that bridge to get guys like Shelton and certainly Dolph, who's a, big fan of Trent, and somebody like Dana Brooks. He could really play a key role in being that bridge. So, looking forward to seeing what happens, but I think it's foolhardy and stupid. Then again, it is wrestling Twitter. For everybody in their mind to just assume all these people finna jump to AEW.
With what room? You know? What are you gonna do? Anyway, let's talk about one of the big names on the roster right now, Masha Slamovich. She just scored pretty high in the PWI 500. Now, I have issue with the PWI 500. They've changed their criteria. For the longest time, the 500 was only for men, and then they introduced the PWI 100 for women, or 50 for women. I forget what it was. And I thought that was nice. And now they've integrated women into the PWI 500, which would have been fine, but then they also have the PWI women's ranking. It's like, well, why have both? And so the whole thing is that, like, it's a lot of intergender-based wrestling. So Masha Slamovich does a lot of that. So she hits number 9, I think. Or no, I don't think it's that high. Let's see, what was she ranked? Doesn't say. I don't think it was number 9, but it's definitely high. So like on one hand, I think it's dumb, right? Because you're somehow saying that it's separate but equal, and I think that's stupid. Either they're part of the 500 or they're not. I don't care if they are or not. I care that they have their own listing, and then they're also part of this listing. I think that's dumb. That being said, I don't disagree. I don't know where she is, and I'm looking that up now to see if I can't find it. But like, I don't disagree that she should be that high. Maybe she's number 15. Maybe Jordan Grace or Deanna Prazo should have been higher than her. But I don't disagree that she's a top 15 worker. I think Impact has a real gem with her. Marcus, thoughts on her landing in the top 15 of PWI's 500?
I like it. I dig it. You know, we always appreciate when we get solid names from Impact up there because they always, so many from the company always rank high on our list. But that's kind of a sticking point when it comes to that stuff. Like, talk about our list. So much of this stuff is so subjective because you talk to one of these fans and they'll do a PWI 500, and it's basically just all people that they, love to look at. So the stuff is real subjective. I stopped really paying attention to these lists years ago. I understand the importance within the industry, and I'm really happy for her, and she deserves to be on the list and certainly high on the list because she is a bad woman. Um, but yeah, like I said, it's kind of hard to be too overly invested, which I know a lot of wrestling Twitter gets because they just have to. But yeah, like I said, it's just so highly subjective in the first place. But there are just a number of women, certainly from Impact, that deserve to be on the list. And I'm glad that she's on there at that level. Of course, I think when even you had listed off um, or reposted the PWI like top 10 or something, it very much came off like a popularity contest.
And
So
sometimes it is.
yeah, sometimes it is. So you can, like I said, you can only put so much investment in it. But if it, it raises, if it does anything to raise her profile, notoriety, and certainly get eyes on Impact, it's all for the good. So go off.
Part of the issue that I have with PWI is that their criteria is well defined but poorly implemented. For example, Josh Alexander's only 9, right? Seth Rollins is over Roman Reigns. Okay. John Moxley's over MJF. Gunther's number 4. I think that's the only one I agree with. El Hijo del Vikingo is I think pretty good. Okada's he's not the world champion. I don't even think who did Sonata beat? Did he beat Okada for the title? Let me check this out. Japan, who did he beat? He defeated Okada. Okada had a 94-day reign.
Yeah.
And somehow warranted a top 7 spot. He was number 7. I don't know why he's there. Cody Rhodes. I understand it's like because here's the criteria: win-loss record, championships won, quality of competition, major feuds, prominence within a wrestler's promotion, and overall wrestling ability. So listen, Roman doesn't have a great win-loss record because he didn't wrestle that much. He hasn't won anything, but he was retained, so I guess that counts. His competition's been up and down. His feuds have been great. He's the most prominent guy in the wrestling company, but he's not a great wrestler. I know people like to do the WWE like, oh well, you've been harassed long enough. Now we get to call you good. John Cena, The Miz, Roman Reigns. They're not good. They're fine. They're WWE wrestlers. They're not great pro wrestlers. But you look at the list and it's like, Josh Alexander's only 9. What? And then we have Claudio Castagnoli, Carmelo Hayes, Samoa Joe, Masha's at 15, Bryan Danielson, Will Ospreay. Hammerstone was the face of his company for 3 years. He's only number 18. But somehow Trey Miguel's number 20. Jake Lee's 23. Takahashi's 27. Adam Page is 28. Listen, I don't like Matt Cardona, but why is he only 31? Why is Jay White only 32? This is what I mean. Their criteria seems